Welcome to Fearless and Flawed. Today, we're joined by Georgia Thomas, an ex-corporate lawyer turned multi-business CEO who ditched her 12-year legal career, built a multi-six-figure agency in 9 months, and then found out she was pregnant 3 months into full-time entrepreneurship. But Georgia didn't slow down. She completely reinvented how she leads. She took a full year off, her business grew, and she didn't lose a single client.
And she's done all of this while building multi-businesses with her husband, from their agency eStudios to app development to an oral beauty brand, jet setting between Dubai, the UK and Florida. Georgia's M&A background means she doesn't just build businesses, she architects them to run without her. Motherhood didn't sideline her strategy, it sharpened it.
She's living proof that you don't have to choose between being a powerhouse and being a mom. And she's not interested in the hustle culture that says otherwise.
And I'm Serena, and I help bold leaders become the go-to expert in their space.
And I'm Sarah, an email marketing pro here to convert clicks into cash. Together, Serena and I are two women in charge, digging into the fearless, the flawed, and the fabulous journeys of female founders rewriting the rules.
So, Georgia, I'm glad you're not in Dubai um, at this particular moment in time. Welcome to our show.
Oh, thank you both so much for having me and for that amazing introduction. I feel like I want to know me.
Awesome. So, hopefully you can all notice that Georgia has an awesome accent here. We haven't had too many Brits on here, but Georgia's not actually in Britain at the moment. She's off traveling. So let's start this podcast properly. So, Georgia, M&A lawyer for 12 years. You've dumped all that to become a creative entrepreneur. This is interesting. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so thank you. I think I don't even know where to begin. I would say that so it wasn't a 12-year career, it was 12 years becoming a lawyer. And like I was a lawyer then, qualified for 3 years. To become a lawyer, as you'll know, takes like 7 years of training. So, all in all, I was 14 when I was like, I'm going to become a lawyer, had my whole legally blonde brunette version moment and said, that's it. I'm going to become the brunette Elwoods. I'm going to be a lawyer. It's not that hard. And made it my dream, made it happen. And then kind of just realized that as time was ticking on and, after meeting my husband, realized that maybe there was more and ended up kind of going down a different path.
Yes, Elle Woods has a lot to answer for, doesn't she?
I think she's the goal. Like she's been the role model for so many women, probably, who decided I'll be a lawyer.
Well, I'm going to be completely transparent here. I've already told you on our pre-call that my daughter is studying law at Exeter, which is where you studied.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times we have watched Legally Blonde. It's a go-to movie in this household. So what was that moment? What was that defining moment where you thought, okay, I want something different here?
Yeah. So I think the background was like my husband, he was already an entrepreneur. So like he has an amazing story, that he didn't go to college, he didn't go to university, he's completely self-made, first job in McDonald's, and just always knew that he was going to be an entrepreneur, like, and just had these big dreams. He was from like a small little town in Wales. And so when I met him, he'd become an entrepreneur at the age of 22. I can't remember how old he was when we met, but I was 25. He was about 28, yeah. So he was 27, turning 28, and he was already in business. And so at the time, it wasn't like I was suddenly like drawn to entrepreneurship. I was still very much like, I'm a lawyer. I was just qualifying when we met. So we were still in kind of those like early days of our relationship. But as time went on and after we got married, I did start to see like the benefits that entrepreneurship gave, like the fact that he could travel whenever he wanted. It was around the time of like lockdown and COVID, and he was flying across the world for conferences and events, and I was stuck. And I just remember thinking, my gosh, I want to be able to do these things. And I actually was really fortunate in that I had a really amazing firm and amazing partners who I worked under. And they did give me opportunities to, join him on travels and work when I was abroad, like all these different things. And I was getting the chance to kind of go alongside him. But there were always moments where I would like have to fly home for work and he'd be left in like Miami. And so I was like already having these moments where I was thinking like, man, I want to stay in Miami. I don't want to be flying away. And obviously we were married. So it did feel like our lives were kind of doing this. His business was sort of like, he was like very much targeting a US market. So that was why the pull constantly to the US. And so it was just definitely a case of that happening. And then a few things happened. So I took a career break. That was like my major moment really, because he needed some help with his business. And I thought that what I was going to help him in would be like legal things, right? So like just help him with his administration, help him with like the legal stuff, getting him into like a really like tight position on all fronts and just helping him, support him in the ways that I could. And in that 9 months, when I was on that career break, I actually ended up helping him and actually taking over one of the other business, which has become eStudios as we know today, the agency. That business was kind of like at a point of struggling. It was doing something different at the time. It was actually, and it's funny because obviously things come full circle, but it was doing podcasting. So it was an in-person podcast studio, but it was COVID. And even though we were able to kind of ride a bit of a wave where people could come to the studio, I realized if we were going to like expand it and grow, and at the time we didn't have like endless cash to pour into it, I needed to do something where I could target an audience anywhere in the world. And so I shifted into like repositioning it for social media marketing and media agency. And in the 9 months that I was on career break, when I was supposed to just be helping him with the legal stuff, I ended up launching this agency and like and growing it. And by the time I was going back to work, just 9 months later, I'd already grown it into like a 6-figure agency. And so there was this moment I was sat on Miami Beach, I was looking out at the beach, and I suppose, that could Miami Beach could probably convert anyone to want to live in Miami and like be an entrepreneur and do that whole thing. But anyway, I was sat on Miami Beach and I was thinking, I've got to go home to Wales and I've got to commute to be a lawyer. And I'd committed to like going back to work. So I did want to uphold my word. But it just felt like in that moment, something in me had definitely shifted. And what felt like my dream my whole life since I was like a 14-year-old suddenly just felt like the dream didn't fit anymore. And like maybe I had new dreams I wanted to step into. And so we went back to the UK. I went back to work. It was just like full throttle, all in, because I suddenly had this agency I was running. I had clients. I was like passionately involved in it. But I was having to do it from my phone, like in lunch breaks and evenings and mornings and on the train. And then I was working full time as a corporate M&A lawyer. So, everyone knows the hours are just not friendly anyway in that career. So I was just like burning the candle at all ends. And I was kind of just waiting for like my sort of big sign that like, yeah, it's time for me to like leave this career behind, because obviously it was just the feeling of like having to prepare myself to take that pivot, like wanting to make sure that I wasn't making a mistake, even though of course I could have gone back and, I could still go back. I'm still a qualified solicitor, so I could still go back to law if I wanted to, but just wanting to make sure that I was making the right decision. And then basically I'd been involved this is kind of like side note, but I'd been involved for a long time with like a charity that I was really passionate about. And they work to like prevent like human trafficking and like anti-slavery. And they work across the world. And I'd done loads of trips with them in the past. And basically the CEO called me and asked me to be on her board as a trustee member because I was a lawyer. And it kind of felt like the stars had aligned. And it was like, even though I was leaving my legal career behind to step into entrepreneurship, I knew that I was almost taking that little bit of law into like this next season with me. Even though I use it in my skills, like as a business owner, it was different because I was like, okay, I actually get to use these skills to like bring good or do something like meaningful. So that was like a big moment for me between the Miami Beach and then being able to like continue to use those legal skills in that way. That was like the kind of thing that solidified it for me. And I do have like this story, which I forgot to mention, but I will mention because I do think it's like pinnacle to like my belief system as a woman. And now that I've become a mum, and in that 3-month period where I was back at work, I was back in work for 6 months, about 3 months, and then I handed in my notice and I had a 3-month notice period. And in that 3 months, when I was like figuring this all out and deciding, is this the life I wanted to live? I had to go to like some work drinks one night, and I was sat across like from some of the partners, and one of the partners asked another partner who was a man, but like asked him, "Oh, haven't your children got their," like he had twins, and "haven't your children got their birthday coming up?" And he was like, "Yeah, it's today, it's tonight." And I was thinking, and you're here at these work drinks that are like completely meaningless, really, and you're missing your kid's birthday. And I just thought to myself, no, this isn't the life I want to live. So those three big major things were like my moments, like, and I just decided that's it. I'm handing in my notice and I'm going all in. So yeah.
So you listened to the universe and you moved on. But surely you come from M&A, mergers and acquisitions. So you kind of see the things that people mess up on, or, from a business perspective, like being too involved in your own business actually affects the sale value and stuff like that. So you came from a really good advantage point from there. Have you used much of that whilst building your companies?
Yeah, definitely. I think like the first thing is, like you said, like you come with a different vantage point, having been in like corporate, been in practice, and the first thing is like you've been part of like a major operation. Like when you're in any legal practice, and I was in the top 20, so like these this is like a well-oiled machine, like how it operates in practice. And so you're playing a part of a bigger picture, and everything's moving strategically and systematically through the firm to deliver services to a client. So you kind of learn something of like, it's not about one person holding everything, it's about a shared effort across a team. And because that was how I'd always, like in any like like in any like serious like business related activity that I'd been involved in, that's how it'd been modeled to me. So I was able to then realize, okay, well, this is how I want to build within my team. So I'd already started to build that structure into my business. And then what it reaffirmed for me then is like, once I finished law and I was full time in the business, and I kind of had this like short period. So I finished in April. I was traveling around Switzerland, and I went back home to Wales, and I was like, right, that's it. I'm going to do the entrepreneurial thing. I'm going to go all in on this business. I'm going to work all hours. Like I'm going to make it happen. And during that sort of period in the July, I found out I was pregnant. And so kind of linking back to that story with the partner and the life I kind of wanted for myself anyway, even though I wasn't like planning motherhood just yet, like it was a little bit of like a beautiful surprise, let's say. And so it came a bit earlier than expected, but I was like, I knew that the day I was going to become a mum, I wanted to be present. I still wanted to work, but I wanted to work in a way that put my daughter, well, I didn't know she was going to be a girl then, but put my child first, and in a way that I knew I wanted to be as a mother. And so I knew I wanted to take a maternity period, because also I was thinking to myself, well, if I'd stayed in law, I would have had a year off. So I was thinking, well, if law could have given me a year off, I'm going to give myself a year off. So I was like, I'm going to take time off to have this baby, be present, enjoy my journey into motherhood. And then I was like, well, if I can do it for a year, there's no way I'm going to go back into the trenches when I come back. So it was like I had 6-7 months, and I was like, I'm going to make this business survive without me, so that when I come back, I can be acting as CEO. And so that was the goal, and that was the plan. And it was like, it's going to happen one way or another. So that was kind of how I did it. And so in terms of then like how I think now for my businesses is that, and we can go back over any of this, but like I basically now help me and my husband do the same for all of our businesses, like lead them as CEOs and directors and founders. And we strategically hire people in the right seats to carry weight at different levels. We delegate responsibility, not just tasks. And we work together as a team. And I think that has meant that we've been able to grow multiple businesses in one go. And I get to still be a present mum.
So one thing I've particularly noticed about you is that so like say, I'm a creative media podcasting, I run podcasts, and all the rest of it. That's my entrepreneurship. You actually say entrepreneurship. You don't actually really go into what it is that is, or what it or labeling yourself, which I find extraordinary, because we all kind of put labels on ourselves. And you completely are not like that.
Yeah, that's so interesting because no one's ever acknowledged that for me, but because you've just acknowledged it, that is so true. And I think it's because the biggest label I ever wore was I'm a lawyer. And I had to like literally rip that label off myself to step into like who I knew I needed to be. And even like in that 6 month period where I was wanting to leave law, and even the 9 month period before that, and then in those few months after, so it's probably like a nearly a 2 year period. I was really trying to rip that label off because I felt like I'd become like, I am Georgia, I am a lawyer. And like even my Instagram account, I used to have this Instagram account that was called The Insta Lawyer. And I was building a brand around me as a lawyer. So I was literally like, I was invested in, and all my friends and family since I was 14, I'd been telling them I am a lawyer. So then I want to be a lawyer, I'm going to become a lawyer. So then when I suddenly like shifted and I was like, I'm leaving law, like even friends and family were like, are you mental? Like, why are you leaving this great stable career behind? Like, and also it was also like very much like, I think some people were like, you're just doing it because your husband is doing it, right? I think there was just this kind of thing like, oh well, you know, Gavin, my husband must be doing well, and therefore I don't need to like worry financially. But that wasn't it at all. I'd literally built the agency completely on my own. And even when I would tell, like, friends would ask me, and they'd be like, so, and maybe it's just like me being like not forward enough about it. But even when they would ask me and they'd say, oh, you know, so are you just like working for Gavin now? Like when I'd left law, and I was like, no, I've built a whole agency. Like I am me. Like, and I think when it comes to like why I don't now put labels on myself is because I kind of like shared with you both. And I do say this sometimes to people. I love our agency, and, you know, I love how we've built it. I love how we're growing it even now. Like we're actually adapting our offers, we're pivoting, the world's changing, we're adapting. And I think what's like interesting is that even though I love it and I love our team and I love what I've built, like I wouldn't say, you know, it's the full, like my full passion, my full dream, it's my everything. It absolutely is not. Like I'm multifaceted. I have like many passions. While I'm working on that, I'm also like launching now this like oral beauty brand, which I'm excited about. I'm then also developing apps and softwares with my husband in the background. So like when I call myself an entrepreneur, it's sometimes because I'm just like, well, that's probably rather than me go down the rabbit hole of what that means for me, I've got like so many different things that I'm working on. And I just would say like none of them are the like totality of who I am. And I just want to keep myself broad enough that if something comes my way, I can step into it. And I don't want to fall back into the trap that I got myself into when I was a lawyer, which was like feeling like that was my identity, because I feel like my identity is Georgia, like, and that's so much more than a job or a career or a business or anything. Like we are able to evolve. And so like I would just say like if there's women who are listening, who, whether they are career pivoters and like starting businesses, or maybe they started a business and now they want to do something else, like it's not that deep. And like then they're not who you are. They're just like one element of your journey, one part of your life, one season, and you can adapt and you can change and you can pivot and you can grow. And I think that's like a woman's superpower, really.
If I'm honest with you, I think the entrepreneurial brain side of things, no matter how we label ourselves, it is that it's that desire to try different things, to perfect other, to follow paths and see where it'll take us. It's not about particularly a label or a career path per se. It is that it's the curiosity, it's the pushing yourself, it's the that's I mean, that's the kind of conversations we have on here all the time about how, you know, somebody has come from one label and now they're an entrepreneur and they're driving towards something completely different. And I think that's really what an entrepreneur is. Not so much that I've started a business and this is what I do. It takes a particular person to step out that comfort zone, to step away from a career that you were building for 12 years, even if that was from when you were 14 watching Our Words. I mean, that's a significant it's a significant change in your life and direction, and it takes a particular person to do that.
Yeah. No, and that's it. I think, like, I recognize that in me, and sometimes, I think this is what's interesting, like, what we were kind of touching on about, the people in your circle, not because they've got bad intentions. They just, like, I think, like, not everyone realizes, like, who you are called to be, or your purpose, or where you're going in life. And you've got to just follow, like, your gut. Like, you've got to follow what you believe is right. And one of the things I've really reflected on recently is, like, isn't it interesting, like, actually how our systems are set out? It's like, I was only 14, really. I didn't really know what I wanted to be. I didn't have an understanding of the world. And actually, like I said, like, I watched Elle Woods. I thought to myself, wow, she can do it, so can I. And I always knew I wanted to go to university. I always knew that, like, I wanted to get an education. And, like, those were just, like, kind of, like, drilled in my mind. Like, that wasn't even, like, a question. I just knew I was going to do that. It was just about what. And, I remember actually, like, when I was saying to my parents when I was young, I used to look at, like, because I loved, like, Vogue magazine. So I'd look at Vogue and I'd say to them, I just want to be the editor in chief of Vogue. And they were like, oh, well, I think there's only one of them in the world. And they were like, well, maybe, like, broaden your horizons a little bit. And so, like, you'd say to your parents, oh, I want to be this and I want to be that. And they would kind of, like, go, oh, yeah. Or, And then basically, I think, obviously, my journey was, like, I obviously said, I want to be a lawyer. And they were like, that's brilliant. And obviously, I just kind of ran at it. And that was obviously in my nature to do that. I'm glad I did. I don't regret it for a second. Like, if I could go back in time and tell little Georgia, I'd say do exactly that, because I learned so much from it. And I think it's what set me up for where I am today. But I do think it's interesting that, like, when we're young, we kind of, like, set our minds on careers and we don't really know what that career actually feels like until we're in it. And so then I think so many people kind of are in that crossroad of, like, being in a great career and thinking to themselves, well, it's like, I don't want to risk my security, or I don't want to let this go just in case it doesn't work out. And so we, like, don't take that leap of faith because we're so much more ambitious, I think, in our, like, yeah, like, younger years, and, like, in our 20s we have, like, these big dreams, like, we think that we can like, take on the world. And then I think sometimes we lose that, like, just because of life. And I guess I'm just trying to fight against that in my own self. Like,
I have a cultural question for you.
yeah,
So you're British, I'm British. Like, we were raised, or I was raised to get a job.
yeah,
Okay, I was raised to get a job and have a career. I wasn't raised for start your own company. I wasn't raised for you can be your own boss. I was always raised to have a boss. So to even now to say that you're an entrepreneur or something like that, it's still alien. So Sarah, I mean, you're American. You were raised, the US
Uh,
side
I was
where
raised to get a job too. Don't get it twisted. I was get a job, but I do think to your point. No, I do think to your point. The U.S. is very entrepreneur. It's been very entrepreneurship forward in the last 15 years. Shows like Shark Tank. Where you have these brilliant ideas, but in the last 15 years or so, I think it's really come up. But you're absolutely right. I think most responsible, quote unquote, parents want stability, security for their children. So the responsible route is usually get a job. But I agree with you. I think the US is more get a job, master it, and then own the industry. That concept. Mhm.
I was going to say here, I mean, you got a job when you left school as a postman. You were going to have a postman house, and you were going to raise your family on a postman salary, and you were going to be a postman for the rest of your life.
and you accepted that as your lot. Like, that was it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I completely agree. And we noticed such a shift in, like, just the difference between the US and UK. And actually, like I mentioned, when we first started coming to the US for like networking events and masterminds and conferences, and I do feel like we caught the American dream and we were just like, wow, like we can do it. And I think it was like a mindset thing, just like going and being in these rooms full of other really amazing and ambitious Americans who were like bolshy and incredible and like just like so brave and so steadfast and like they were going to do it. And then it kind of made us just think, yeah, so can we. Like, and we already kind of we were already in business to be going to these events. But I think we've definitely found over the years, whenever we come to the States, especially for these events, and we network with, American entrepreneurs, we sort of like catch that little bit of fire, what you're talking about. And it's not to say it's not in the UK, but I do think then like the contrast is like, going back to like the people we know in our circles in the UK and be like, this is what we're doing. And it just seems alien, it seems foreign. And like, that's been a hard thing to kind of like work through, because like I felt like it was more socially acceptable for me to succeed in becoming a lawyer, but like for me to succeed and be a business owner, it's like faced with skepticism basically in the UK.
I completely agree. I've seen exactly the same thing. So yeah, I mean that us Brits were much more reserved.
I have a bit of a technical question for not technical, but first of all, I love when you talk about American entrepreneurs, because I totally get that, like that hustle culture, wake up and be who you want to be. I think is great and very American, right? Build from the ground up. I would also challenge that with like nowadays, no one wants a 9 to 5. Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, and like it's okay to work a 9 to 5 too. Sometimes with the youth, it's like, hey, get your foot in the door, and like I preach this a lot now. Like now, I feel like I'm an old folk saying like it's okay to work 9 to 5 too. But with that said, for those people who are listening, and your story is so inspiring with like resilience and pivoting. But you mentioned with eStudios, it's a bit more of a technical question. Like you built it up, 6 figures. Talk to us about that. I'm curious. How would you find clients? How would you build it up? Because that tends to be like the dream. We hear a lot about the dream, but getting the clients, securing payment from the clients is incredibly hard. So can you just build us or walk us through how you were able to scale that? What type of people you find? Did you find them? Did they come to you? Just talk us through the business element of that. Because I think a lot of people listening would say, how the hell did you secure that?
Yeah. I think like I want to sort of start with like the how I was able to, because I think that's really crucial. And also kind of to your point, which is like, should you just go quitting your jobs and everyone become entrepreneurs? So the timeline was like, I started this business with my husband. We initially, like when it was like first starting out, we were like kind of like hustling for work, like in the traditional sense, in that like, it wasn't fast flowing in the first like 6 months or whatever. When it was like first starting off as a podcast studio, but what we were able to leverage was my husband was building a separate business on the side, which was it was called Weeble Coaches, and he was building coaching platforms for people who were pivoting to online. It's back in 2020, so it's like 2019, 2020. So it was when like obviously that was still like a novel thing, and people were starting building coaching programs online. So he was building people's coaching programs out in Kajabi when that was still pretty novel to do. And we realized, like, hang on a minute, everyone's going into lockdown. What if we said, come to our studio, film all your like coaching programs, we'll edit it, and then Gavin, my husband, would turn it into a course for them. So it was like we realized we could like combine the two offers. We were cross-servicing and cross-selling, which was like an amazing way. So like clients were coming to us, we were upselling them into the coaching program. People were coming to the coaching program. We were saying, come to our podcast studio and we can film it. And obviously, again, 2019, 2020, there weren't many studios like that around, like green screen studios at the time. And then basically, so we were kind of like doing that, and we were starting to make some money. In all of this time, I was still in practice. So I never took payment from this business. I never paid myself a penny in those early days when we started having like retainers, like serious retainers. I made like my first hire, which was my brother, because I knew I could trust him. Like I wanted someone I could trust, someone who I could basically tell, like, you need to do all these
I
things.
would never hire my brother.
And this is what's wild. Like people always say you shouldn't hire a brother and things like that. But I think in that season, that was a good move for us. And also my brother's very creative, talented. So like he was able to ride that with us. And but basically I was still in work, and what we were able to do was like start to build the retainers up without me having to take any money from the business. And then when the time came that I needed to take a career break to like support Gavin, my husband, obviously I had to take 9 months where I didn't have like a salary coming in on my side. But between like what we already had in retainers and like how my husband was doing, I was able to like manage that 9 months. But we did face like a moment in that time period, and also during that period, because we eloped during COVID, and we had our wedding in that period when I was on that 9 month career break. So we were paying for a wedding as well, and we had like that to pay for. And there was a period during that, like when we were on the like come up, as I would say, where I remember it got like pretty tight, and we were like, okay, we really need like things to shift. And we were doing everything actually. We were doing all the old school marketing. Like we were in Wales, like in the city we were in, and we were like going out giving out flyers and like trying to get local business, and we did like we acquired some local business. We were obviously also like targeting people in the US, and we kind of just knew it was funny. We were like, we need to just get to Miami. We feel like if we can get to Miami, we'll be able to like get in these rooms with these people. And my husband and I were both blessed with the gift of the gab. So we were like, we know that if we can get ourselves in front of some good American people, we can sell them. Because like we just knew, the thing is, we knew we can deliver an amazing service. And uh, we do know, like what you were kind of saying about the difference in attitudes. It's like, we knew that British people struggled to part with money, whereas in America, people see money as a means to an end. And we were like, the end that you need is great social media results and like growth on social media and leads generated from what you're putting out on social media. So we knew we had the offer. We just needed to get the clients. And so we managed to like maneuver our way to America for this trip, the final trip that we did at the end of my career break. And we got ourselves in the right rooms, and we just basically like we figured out what people needed, and we just sold them onto the offer. And that sounds like easier said than done, but we were able to just like navigate like mine and my husband's different relationships and kind of pull people into the offer. Now at that point, I think like things were really starting to take off, and obviously I was like bringing in new business, but still I never put myself on salary. I'd take like during that career break, I would pay myself expenses as a director. I'd take what I needed to, but I didn't want to rinse the business. I wanted the business to thrive. So when I started, like as I would land clients, rather than me like taking the money out of the business, I would like hire a new member of staff in the area I needed to. And I always like explain it kind of like this, like if when you're in the early stages of business, if you were to draw like a team graph of like who sits in what seat. So like you're the CEO founder, and then you've got like, so like for us, because we were an agency, okay, we've got like our video editors, and we've got like client managers. So I had like a client manager first, and we were outsourcing like video editing. Then we hired video editors, and then we had different team members, and we slowly like we had a quality control person. And like I was building the team where I could save time and like leverage the people to like their best ability in different ways. And what I would do is I'd like keep this spider diagram, and I would put my name in all the seats that I was still filling. So it's like, okay, I'm still doing quality control. So it was like then highlighted, well, I would need a quality control person to relieve me of time here. And so as I was saying, like I wasn't paying myself first. I was just hiring when I needed to hire in the areas that would relieve me of time. And it kind of, that's how I was structuring the team. So by the time I went back to work, I actually had, and like, I think things can be said, like nowadays, like there's a lot that AI can do. There's a lot of great softwares and systems. You actually don't need people for some of the jobs that I needed people for even just a few years ago, because like now you just don't need them. But I did at the time, like if things weren't as advanced at that point, and I was still leveraging people like to do a lot of tasks. And what I would do is I was hiring this team, and when I went back to work, I had a team of 12 people at that point. And it was so when I went back to work, I'd already, I think my monthly retainers were more than my annual salary, like at that point when I went back to work. But obviously I wasn't taking, that's in the business, I wasn't taking that money out. And then when I was back in law, in that 3-month period, we closed like a major client, which was like basically doubled income, and or something thereabouts. And basically I realized then, I was like, right, I definitely can start paying myself. And so when I left law and went back into the business full time, I just put myself on the exact same salary I was being paid as a lawyer. I didn't pay myself over that. I didn't pay myself any less. I just was like, if that's what I was be paid as a lawyer, I want to pay myself the same amount. And so I lived at the same level, if that makes sense. And that meant that when the business kept growing, I was able to keep hiring great staff. And then obviously when I found out I was pregnant, I had the capital to be able to hire an amazing head of operations who could basically replace me. And I put him more on. I put him on more than I'd ever been paid at that point from this business. But I did that because I knew it would give me the gift that I needed, which was time, like with my daughter.
Genius. Like everything you said is like a masterclass in how to avoid the pitfalls of entrepreneurship. So just like to summarize, 'cause I think this is incredibly important. Like many people don't take a salary in the beginning. That is almost all. That is very normal. But understanding when money does come in, right? Instead of treating yourself with a nice fancy vacation, you said you put it towards the salary of someone that could replace a job or a certain task that you were doing. And I think that that is really a testament of being very gritty and being very like entrepreneurship, mentally focused, because a lot of people,
They
that
want to save the
grind.
cash and do all the work.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that, anyone who's listening who's thinking about, like, that is the way to do it, right? And, like, having the same salary as a lawyer, like, you need to eat as well, but, like, putting that back into the business, I think, is incredibly important, and so I couldn't have said it any better. Serena and I talk about this all the time about, like, the importance of paying yourself, but also there's a time and place to do that, right? You gotta grow the engine first.
There are more important people in the process than you most of the time. Without them, you can't grow. So you have to balance that out. Do you want to grow, or do you want to take home a salary now? So it's a case of live today for tomorrow, or I don't know, it's a balance. You have to find that balance.
And you have to be frugal. Like you can't just be like crazy with your spending. Like you don't want to overhire too fast, but you want to make sure that like your team, and of course, like, there's times that I like have also had to make cutbacks like in team, and you go through different moments, but at the same time, it's kind of like being mindful of like, you always being mindful of your numbers. Like, okay, well, like how much am I making per month? And like how much is the business costing me, and not forgetting like you've got taxes to pay, and like I said, like preparing for that rainy day. Like when I found out I was pregnant, if I hadn't had like the capital in the business to be able to hire someone really great, would it have been able to sustain that year? And that's the thing, like when I took that year off, and when I say a year off, like what I mean is like I literally for like the first like 3-4 months, I was very much like, do not disturb, please. I'm like in a love bubble right now with my newborn. But after that, I was like, I'd check in, I'd like have a call with my head of ops. Like I would like check in with the team, join a team call every now and again. I was still kind of like overseeing like some of the major things, like, just like new client contracts, payroll, things like that. That was just the lawyer in me. Like I didn't want anyone else to like send out contracts. I wanted me to be the one to do that. But between those things that I still held on to was so minimal that in that first year, I really was able to just like basically take the year off. And the involvement I had still in that period was minimal. But what that meant then was like I had to make sure that one, the business, like I think this is also a really important point because prior to me finding out I was pregnant, I was in scale mode, right? So I was thinking, we've grown this far, so fast, like so fast, so quick. I've left my job. That's it now. I'm gonna blow this agency up. Like we're gonna do it. But when I found out I was pregnant, I had to like shift my tack because I was like, if I'm not going to be there like pushing the growth of the business and I want to take this time off, my what I need to happen in this period isn't actually about growth, it's about retention. So I changed like the approach for the whole of the team and I wanted everyone to become better. So I focused on everyone becoming better at like their job, like graphic designers get better, editors get better, like client managers and strategists, you need to get better. Like, and it was like constantly like drilling into the team and like investing in the team's training to become better. And then in terms of like goal was just like, let's just do the best job we can possibly do for our clients so that we don't lose any. And that was why we were able then in that year to like not only retain the clients that we've retained, but actually upsell pretty much all the clients. And so like we were able to actually grow the business in that year off rather than like lose any revenue. We didn't lose a single client, but we didn't actually like, we didn't market ourselves mad. We just, and I wasn't even worried about it because I was like, I'm not going to be doing any marketing. You won't be getting any reels from me. I'm not worried about what you guys do. Just keep it ticking along, show that we're present. And I just was like, it's not about growth in this season. It's literally about becoming the best we can be. Because then I knew that the moment I was ready to come back and say, okay, it's time to like start the sales, I knew that we'd be at a point where we were already better. So then like we would be able to go to that next level. So that's kind of how I did it. And I think if I tried to do both at the same time, if I tried to like keep us growing whilst taking that time off, I don't think we would have had the same success because our attention would have been on like sales and growth, but instead it was focused on like doing a really great job for our clients.
So I have to say that is music to my ears. I have worked with so many different people over the years, and some of them that have been so obsessed by growth fail in the quality, and they have their attrition is appalling. They have no one comes back to them. They lose clients quicker than anything else, and it's to me that is arse backwards. It's all wrong. All wrong. Let's not do that. Let's not do that. Let's aim for quality, going 1% better. I'm looking at Sarah when I say that. 1% better every day. Just looking at getting better and proving your worth, and then you never ever have to defend what you do because it speaks for itself. And then you grow. Then your company actually grows.
Just to give you some context, Georgia, Serena and I, when we work together, we would use that 1% better rule. If we're just 1% better every day, right? Instead of like, we're going to triple this overnight, 1% better, 1% better. And it seems like you've been able to navigate the curveballs, the pitfalls. You mentioned a lot about seasons, right? This is a season. So I'm gonna test now how resilient you are to a curveball during the podcast around this time as we kind of near the end and we hear your fabulous journey. We like to throw a little bit of a curveball, a fun curveball at our guests, and we ask you a question from our previous guests. Okay, now I'm very confident that you're going to knock this out of the park, just given your track record of being able to pivot. It is a bit, you know what? I'm just going to ask the question. It's a bit out there. Our last guest was very creative and very artsy, a wonderful, wonderful woman. So her question to you, not knowing who the next guest was, her question was, are you ready? If you were to build a bridge between our planet and another planet, what would you make it out of and how would you move across it?
Wow. I feel like
Yeah,
that's interesting.
very artsy, very Just for context, she's an artist and she created this mural project where it's X number of murals, tiny small paintings.
220 something
21 maybe
pieces.
around there, so people buy it, and so she has this love project where everyone owns a piece of the love mural across the world. So that's kind of the
All these different
context.
connecting lines from
Yes.
multiple countries for love.
Yes. So that's just to repeat, if you were to build a bridge between our planet and another, what would you make it out of and how would you move across it?
That is wild. I think,
It is
well,
wild.
we can only visually see something, which is very futuristic, I suppose, but I would see it sort of as like an airtight like an airtight tunnel. And it's like like it can't be glass, but it's something really strong that's airtight, made of what spaceships are made of. And then I would see it as like a shuttle that you like board on one end and you like to the other side on
So
the other.
you mean like the old accounting systems in shops where you put your notes in one of these pods, it go into
Yeah.
this,
I'm sure this is it like a shutter? It's like a zoop, and you would literally go into like your little pod shuttle and you'd just go zoop to the other planet and then you'd land there. I feel like that's
so
probably
you'd
like
be like squashed to the bottom of this pod, like
yeah, yeah. But imagine it, it'd be quite cool seeing space like on your journey. Maybe I have to go a little bit slower so you can have a moment and just
I love
catch a
that answer. That answer, you know what I love about that answer, Georgia, is like you could have taken it anywhere. It didn't have to literally be like mechanically functional, right? You could have just been like, "Oh, I'm gonna build cotton candy and I'm gonna bounce around and I'm gonna wear a pair of wings." Like, but you were very your engineer, but your lawyer brain was like, "Okay, how do I do this in a way where it's secure? I won't get sued." It
I don't
sounds
know, there's a few broken bones going on here, I
yeah, yeah,
think.
it's compact, it works. I love that answer, and for the next person who's on the podcast, you have no idea who they are, what industry they work in, creative, analytical, no idea. What do you wanna ask them? What question? Any question from your experience, your personal life, whatever. Like, would you ever work with your husband? I'm just putting it out there because I know a lot of people listening would be like, "Meh, no."
I love it. I think like because a lot like what we've sort of touched on today and like a lot of entrepreneurs are doing something amazing and or women like in business are doing amazing things. But like I don't know, like maybe in the back of their mind they're thinking, oh, if I could go back in time, like what business would they do instead? So the question is if you could start over from scratch, you were like living a completely different life. You can even live in a different country. What would you be doing? And like, would it be the same as what you're doing now, or would you be doing something completely different? And some people, I'm sure, will be like, "Yeah, I'm doing the same thing because this is my absolute passion." But I think some people might be like doing something completely different. I think that'd be cool to answer.
I love that. I love that. That really challenges, I think, people. I think there's sometimes this concept of like no regrets, right? Like, oh, I don't regret anything because it made me who I am. But I really think deep down inside, if some people could shift or change, they'd be like, yeah, no, I don't want to have to live through the trials and tribulations sometimes. Sometimes starting from scratch kind of is the answer, if like things are just stacking up and you're like, did I really have to go through all that? If there was an easier route? Interesting. I love that question. So for people who are listening and they're like, okay, power woman, great accent, first of all. I love a British accent. Power woman, Governor, I love the British accent. Like when Serena and I met, thank God we are still friends years later because every single time we'd call each other or show up on a Zoom meeting, I'd say, "Governor, are you there?" And she'd say, I'm here, I'm here." No, I really do. I love the posh accent. It just to me feels so like whatever you're saying, I'm buying. Whatever you're selling, I'm buying. Your framework.
That's why us Brits talk to you Americans
Yeah,
for
yeah,
our
yeah.
country.
Exactly. That's why. Exactly.
It's got nothing to do with the networking thing, it's the fact we have the accent.
It's the accent plus the brains naturally, of course. But for
No,
people
no, there's no
listening
brains, it's just accent.
it's just
Just
accents.
hides the fact that we have
Yes.
no brains.
For people listening who say, I wanna check out eStudios. I wanna just, like, see it more like it's this agency. So she mentioned social media, but it sounds like she knows what she's doing. How do people find you? How do they find the agency? How do they maybe find your Instagram with your adorable daughter scooting around the world with you? Where is that all located?
Yep. So you can find me at with 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 Georgia Thomas on Instagram, TikTok, and I'm going to say website if you wanted to check us out is createwithystudios.com. But you can find everything in my Instagram bio, everything's there. And I will hint that we do have something really exciting coming soon. And I think that the best place will be to follow me on Instagram because when that drops, it will all be there.
Love that.
I
Love that.
think we should have had an exclusive. What's going to
I
drop?
kind of do
Guys
too.
afterwards. I'll tell you guys afterwards. I'm not sure when this is launching.
A true entrepreneur, breadcrumbing us, but kind of behind the scenes is like, wait, when are we doing? That's a great mark. It's a little suspense, but I think what a lot of people will learn from this podcast is many times the entrepreneur themselves is like, wait, we have something coming up, but behind the scenes are like, when are we actually getting it out? That
It's a
is,
great thing about being an entrepreneur. We get to set our own schedules.
yeah. Love it. Georgia, I think if Elle Woods were here, she would say, "Holy shit, you took it to the level and more. Mom, entrepreneur,
I think she
wife."
would have gone snatch or something.
Snap. It
Like
has really. It's been. I think Elle Woods being your icon,
Drop,
and you.
what's it? Drop. Sorry. Drop and snatch.
But I really do. I think if she looked at you, she'd say, "I want to be you. I want to do what you did." Your story was incredibly inspiring. For any listeners who are listening or people who are watching, you know how to find Georgia. Thank you for being on the
Check out
podcast.
Fearless and Flawed. We will
Check
have
out Fearless
her
and Flawed.
details on our site.
Yep. And keep us posted. We would love to be part of your journey.
Oh, it was so amazing being with you both, and thank you so much. And yeah, this is amazing. I just want to say, like, women just need to keep listening to other women because we're constantly surrounded by like loud stories of men who are waking up at 4 a.m. and they don't have like kids and they don't have to worry about that stuff and they're doing a completely different thing. Like, keep listening to amazing women who are doing it their way, and like you'll realize that you can do it too, rather than like being like faced with like this impossible task like that maybe like someone living a completely different reality is setting. So it is possible. That's all I'll say.
Thank you so much, Georgia. We will certainly be in touch to find out what what eStudios 2.0 will be up to.
Yes, thank you.